Our stories are brilliant. We are resilient. Our stories are brilliant. We are resilient.
Hey there, writer. Thank you so much for joining us today on Your Voice Matters with Jen Chambers. Today is week 10 of our series on Write Your Story. We're talking about pacing and structure, how to keep your story moving without losing its meaning. Have you ever read a story that dragged in places, even though the subject was interesting? Or maybe you've written one. Or you found yourself stuck in a scene that just would not move. It's hard when your own writing is boring. That's the kind of stuff we're talking about today. This episode's all about pacing and structure. You can call those the heartbeat of your story. We'll talk about how to shape your narrative so that it flows and how it can balance reflection and action. And that way it'll keep your reader emotionally invested without overwhelming them or boring them. Plus, I'll walk you through 3 fresh writing exercises, a short meditation, and some standout examples from memoirs that master this balance beautifully. Because here's the truth, and I tell you guys this all the time, anyone can be a writer. You already are, if you've ever told a story. The trick is to shape it. And pacing is one of the sharpest tools in your storytelling kit. Okay, our first writing exercises. We're going to rewrite for urgency. Why don't you grab a piece of paper? For this one, we're assuming that you have a story from your life in mind. It could be something you've already written if you want. And remember, each chapter of a memoir or an autobiographical story is a miniature story in and of itself, so think about that. If you don't have one yet, let's start with something small. You can write something like, "This happened and then," kind of sentence to start with. Like, "I went to the rodeo and then jot down a few details about that incident in your life. Then you write a quick version of that story that you want to tell. And you'll use that instead. So with the one you just wrote or one that you have in mind, reread it. Find a slow section in that narrative. Something maybe where your story drags, but you don't know why, or you're over-explaining something. Now I want you to take a couple minutes and rewrite this section, but use shorter sentences. Use verbs that are more sharp, and use fewer adverbs. And as a parts of speech kind of refresher, because sometimes I still have to think about it, a verb is, of course, an action word. A noun is a person, place, or thing. And an adverb is something that modifies. It's usually something that ends in ly, like quietly or quickly. Now, I mean, apologies. I'm not trying to talk down to anyone or be condescending. Truly, truly, truly. I write all the time, and I still get confused. Especially with adverbs. I have like a mental block or something with adverbs. I don't use them really hardly at all. They're not really strong. They're not declarative. So I personally try to use them only in dialogue or not at all. But adverbs are one of the things that talk around what you want to say rather than saying it in a sharper and easy to read kind of way, if that makes sense. So cut out those. Cut out the run-on sentences. Make your sentences smaller, especially with dialogue. And aim for momentum. You're trying to keep things going. Let me give you an example here. Okay, so before you could say something like, "I was walking down the road slowly, thinking about everything that had happened earlier that week and how it made me feel." It's not bad. It says what happened. But if you said instead, "I walked fast, the air burned, my thoughts pounded louder than my boots," that gives action, right? The air burned. You have motion. You are walking fast. Your boots were pounding. So that kind of could tell us that you're running. I mean, that literally brings action to something that started out being sort of like a kind of weak memory, right? So for this exercise, I want you to rewrite maybe a half a page or a whole page of your story using this technique. Then I want you to read both versions out loud. Which one feels more alive? Which one do you like better? All right, for our second exercise today, we're doing something called a drag spot diagnosis. So I want you to take a recent piece of writing. It could be the one you were working on before or something else. And I want you to highlight or circle 3 areas. As you're reading it, think about, are you feeling bored? Are you over-explaining? Are you repeating yourself? And then for each of these, cut out 10 to 20% of the text. Are you using $10 words when $1 words will work just fine? It's okay to say things straightforward. Sorry, I said that funny. You don't have to be flowery or, over tell something. And also ask yourself, what is this scene doing? Why is this scene here? And what do you want readers to understand about this scene? And also replace any kind of summary with action or dialogue where possible. So, like, you're not talking about, well, I walked down the road. I walked fast. The air burned. My thoughts were pounding. That's so much more vibrant, right? And this is a really good practice in being kind with yourself, because it's not like you're telling yourself you have a bad product. It's just not quite where it needs to be. You're being ruthless but kind. This is a trait that a lot of good writers and editors share. Sometimes you might feel like they're more ruthless than kind, but in my experience, most other editors really try their best to be kind and helpful. All right, for the third exercise today, we're talking about the rule of 3 acts. I want you to split up your story. We're even just going to talk about one chapter or the piece you're working on for something. But we're going to split it into 3 parts. Oh, excuse me, I yawned. We've talked about this a little bit before. But I want you to see if you can do this with each part of your book. If you're writing a book, make it be each chapter or even each scene if you have a story. What's the beginning? What's the middle? And what's the end? So the beginning includes the setup, the backstory, and the inciting moment. The middle is the conflict, the rising tension, and the turning point. And the end is the resolution, the reflection, and the transformation. So in order to do this, I want you to map your story across these 3 acts. So use kind of a graph on your paper. Start with the setup. Go setup to backstory. Backstory to inciting moment to conflict. So those should go, roughly in a little bit of a stair step. The conflict is at your highest point. Then in your middle, your rising tension gets a little higher still, and your turning point. Their turning point is the highest point yet. So your resolution and reflection and transformation, your resolution and reflection can go down a little bit, and your transformation maybe back up a little bit at the very, very end. So once you have your line mapped out, you can add a scene tag with keywords from that scene. So, you're beginning, you are on the street. And then in the middle, you're at the 7-Eleven. Your conflict is when someone tries to rob the 7-Eleven. I don't know. And then your transformation is at the very, very end. So once you have your line mapped out, then make sure you add a vertical line separating the beginning from the middle from the end. And are they balanced? Do you want them to be balanced? Does each of the 3 acts have a purpose? Is your story going somewhere? And where does the energy dip in your story? You can usually spot this pretty easily. And then how can you re-energize it? Do you need to add more action? Do you need to add a little bit more dialogue? You could keep doing this forever and ever. This kind of exercise is great. And it helps you kind of refine exactly what you want to say, but in such of a better way. It's really helpful. So for some examples of really good memoirs, the first is Educated by Tara Westover. She balances her trauma in this book, but there's also powerful momentum. Her chapters are short, and her pacing is really crisp. The readers move through this emotional territory, and we don't get overwhelmed because things keep happening. She's very crisp, and there's a lot of action. In the same way, Jeanette Wall's The Glass Castle, she uses reflection, thinking back, but she uses it in very short bursts. And all of those are surrounded by a lot of action. So even when things are slow, there's tension. And tension is one of the undercurrents that propel things forward. The actions are sometimes so horrific in that book that it's hard to read. But that's another thing that helps with shorter sections. It's quite masterful, actually. All right, for our mini meditation, we're going to find your story's rhythm. This is really fun. So sit quietly and close your eyes. I want you to breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 2, and exhale for 6. Now picture your story as if it were music. Now that you have that line, where does your story crescendo? Or get louder? Where does it get softer? Which parts of your story move faster? And which ask for stillness? Think about that, visualizing that on a music line. Sometimes when you think about stories this way, it can help you visualize where you need to add or subtract, or add something completely new. Take another breath. This is a real short, brief pause. But say to yourself, I honor the pace of my story. I write with breath and balance. All right, our resources for today are a book called Save the Cat Writes a Novel by Jessica Brody. It's really great for learning how the narrative beats and structure in stories can apply to memoir too. One of my absolute favorites is Jane Friedman's blog. She is just a multi-talented writer, publisher. She writes for Writer's Digest. She's incredibly interesting. And she has a really great Substack that I recommend as well. Her stuff's really packed with clear advice, very grounded. She's an expert in everything pacing and publishing and storytelling, and she's truly a master of the craft. Her website is www.janefriedman.com. That's JANEFRIEDMAN.com. All right, my final thought for today is I want you to remember that writing isn't just about what happened. It's about how you shape it. Your perspective on that, your pacing. It helps your reader to breathe and feel and move through your story with you. You don't need permission to write. You just need tools and trust in your voice. I think it's really important to talk about pacing after we talked about writing hard things. Because like I was saying in Jeanette Wall's books, you can't just write horrific thing after horrific thing, if that happens to be what your story is about. Or just, slog after slog. You need to have pacing. So you need to have time to reflect. And you need to give the reader time to reflect. Something to really think about. But as usual, I want to remind you to trust in your voice because your story matters. And your pace is perfect. You're going to find it. Thank you so much for joining us today. Remember to please rate and review and share with someone if you feel the need. or if it could help them out. I'll see you next week.
Sometimes we have to start over. Sometimes we have to fight back. Sometimes it's all too much. Lost inside the black. Our stories are brilliant. We are resilient. Our stories are brilliant. We are resilient. Sometimes we need to lift the voices of those who've overcome and expose the ones that made the choices to stay and fight, not